Month 4 of Zap. The question is, have I gained back weight? I feel like I have. So the number to beat is 154.5. Oh, I gained 4 pounds this month. I'm only like 8 pounds lighter than when I started Zap at this point. Bringing it back. Hello everyone. I happen to be in Santa Barbara at the conclusion of month 4, and so I'm at Al's place here. It's a third of a year, which is pretty significant at this point. Unfortunately, I really still feel that like I'm going uphill towards 6 months, and with winter, the uphill has been seeming more and more steep. I noticed when you normally have a bad day, you go home and maybe you have like some chocolate and sit down and watch a movie and kind of indulge yourself and reward yourself. And during this section I had some rough days where I was just kind of miserable and I really couldn't indulge, and it made the suffering all that much worse. Like whenever you're sick, you just like say, hey, I'm gonna indulge and watch a whole day's worth of TV. When I was sick, I just had to sit there and be miserable. Along with that goes like rewarding yourself by just taking time off. Like it's hard for me because I can't really take time off without feeling really guilty, feeling like I'm squandering my resources, because time really is become a resource to me. On Zap, small mistakes become big mistakes pretty quick. An example of this was that I was making a second batch of applesauce and I got rushed. I actually used salt instead of sugar, which normally, you'd be like, damn, that sucks. I just wasted this time. I have to throw out my applesauce. But for me, it was, a day's worth of work gathering apples, peeling them, coring them and all that. And then like a cup of salt, a couple brown sugar, cinnamon, all that stuff, totally wasted. So like a little mistake can become kind of a big mistake in the post-apocalyptic world. I have really limited mobility, and that's not only in the sense that I have to like kind of hitchhike or hitch rides with people to get around, but I really can't be far from my support network. So here I am in Santa Barbara, and it's pretty difficult because if I want to go out with people, I can't really just stop and grab some food somewhere. I have to plan my entire day, like all my food, and inevitably I don't get enough food. Or like I'm at my friend's house and his kid takes my egg and like smashes it on the sidewalk, and then I have most of my breakfast is gone or whatever. When you get home after a long day, you're tired, you're exhausted, you need to eat, you need to eat, but you're almost so tired you just want to go to bed sometimes. And you have this normally, and then you just go, okay, well, I'll just heat something up, But on Zap, it's like, oh man, I pretty much have to make everything from scratch, and you don't realize how long it takes to really make a meal. To make soup especially, you need a whole day in advance to make broth, and then you got to cook rice and beans, takes hours. So it's definitely, you got to plan accordingly for that kind of thing and get going early. Otherwise, you're just kind of miserable, You eat some tangerines, go to bed, wake up, and then you just feel weaker the next day. I remember talking before about how food was money, and you kind of had to decide how you were going to spend it, or whether you're going to hoard it and be a little stingy. On the intake, as the food's coming in, is money, but then I also realized that like activity going out is kind of spending money, which is interesting. So like I surfed 2 times this month, which is my first 2 times surfing in a third of a year, which is pretty much horrible. But I just didn't feel like I had the energy and the stores and the time to go and do it. So this time, like one time, the surf was just really good, and I was just like, it's just worth the energy, like psychologically, it's going to help me more than the energy that I'm using. The second time was more interesting because I was at the beach and the surf was kind of lousy, but I was with Marcos and we don't get to surf very often. So I was just sitting on the beach watching him surf, and I realized that as the tide hit negative, that there was just tons of mussels all over these rocks where we were. And so I got down in there and I popped off lots of mussels, got them all stashed up, and then I felt like a little bit more confident that I had some food stashed away and then I could probably afford to go surfing. I feel like at this point in Zap, I'm starting to realize that this is kind of more a test of my mind than my body. I seem to be able to bring in enough nutrients and calories to sustain myself, but they're all like, deer jerky or canned deer meat or canned goose meat and just straight vegetables from the garden. And it's like, at what point does your mind just say, I'm just over this, It is more willpower to just continue on than actually like feeling like your body is giving out, especially now that I've managed to gain some weight back. Being hungry has kind of gone away. I'm always a little bit hungry, but I feel like I'm always just kind of tired. for no reason. I mean, I get plenty of sleep, and yet I'm still tired. I get more sleep than I used to. I'm more exhausted than I ever have been. Along with this of having to eat soup every day, day in, day out, is kind of like the psychology of variance. I find myself wondering why it is that I want to eat something else. You know, why do I want a varied diet? Soup will sustain me, then why is it that I'm craving other things? And I guess that's just like some sort of strange adaptation where, you know, our ancestors, whichever ones were more inclined to eat a various diet, probably survive longer because they're getting more vitamins and minerals and nutrients from different sources. I gotta say that winter has been difficult for me. I had anticipated this, which I think helps. You know, it gets dark early, it's rained a lot. Even when it was sunny, I was sick. It's kind of fun when you're not on Zap to be in a big storm, and in the winter where you can go out, you know, and watch some movies, do things after dark. You know, you can go to the bars and hang out and socialize, and just nothing that I really enjoy in the winter seems to be as enjoyable on Zap. The apocalypse during the wintertime is going to suck. Luckily, during this month, I had a lot of social activity. You know, it was sporadic, but I saw Allison a bunch. My friends and I were hanging out for Christmas and shoot moss and everything. I would say the most exciting news about month 4 is that my knee seems to have mostly recovered from my spearfishing accident. I went surfing a couple times, I went spearfishing a couple times, I've been riding my bike, and I do feel a slight strain in my knee, but I feel like it's about 90%. I am able to go and do all the things that I was not only looking forward to, but that I actually need to do to sustain myself. So that is very good. Let's keep our fingers crossed on that one, because an injury in this situation, it's just not good. Physically it's not good, you can't get food, but psychologically it's just absolutely horrible because you're just sitting there thinking about it all the time, and you never know when it's going to go out, and so you can't really trust it, so it's kind of always in the back of your mind holding you back. And without a tribe to assist me, it's over, you know. I think in the true apocalypse you would have small bands of people coming together, supporting each other, and so if you got injured, there would be other people to pick up the slack for you. The longer Zap goes on, the more I see this as a flaw in the actual experiment. To really know and to really learn, I think you would need 10 to 12 people, maybe 20 people, and it would just change the entire dynamic. I find it interesting that in the world there's this phrase, feast or famine. You know, I always kind of like thought about, but it's just so pertinent to Zap that I feel like it was invented by people struggling like way back in the day, and it's just kind of clung to our society. I go to the beach, I get tons of mussels, and I'm just feasting. You know, kill a goose, and I've got all this food. In between those times, I'm just getting by on, you know, fruit, you know, Buckeyes or whatever, and it seems like the apocalypse to me will be feast or famine, you know. If you shoot a deer, all of a sudden you've got all this deer meat, and you're just like, I gotta eat all this meat. So you're just gorging yourself, like 3 meals a day, as much as you can eat, especially because it's hard to store, and then once it is stored, in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, I don't want to use that, I want to hold on to that for later. So you're not really like feasting on this stuff, and you're only eating it when you're really in the famine stages. So maybe this wouldn't be as much of a problem in the apocalypse. We had quite a bit of social activity, including shoot moss. I found myself either drunk or hungover fairly often. It sucks on Zap. The main reason for this is that you want food. When you're drunk, you just want to eat all kinds of food, and you either break down and start eating stuff out of your freaking cabinet, like protein bars or whatever you got laying around, or you don't eat it and you get even more drunk and then even more hungover, and then in the morning you just want to eat pizza or whatever and you don't have it, so you eat something else that you can't afford to be eating. So it's really not conducive to surviving the experiment to be drinking heavily. So it being wintertime, I have really noticed that people have created this world where they're really, really minimally affected by the environment outside, you know. I just find it interesting how successful we've been at comforting ourselves and buffering ourselves from any kind of harshness, which starts to kind of like creep through the cracks as soon as you're on the apocalypse. You can do whatever you want. If it's raining, go to work and be at work and get your job done to sustain yourself. Another thing that has really come up as a problem with enacting the experiment is exchange rate flaws. Everyone seems to have much pity for me and constantly tries to bring me strange food that is either Zap approved or not Zap approved for various reasons. I'm supposed to only be able to trade food with people. So first of all, people bring me foods that are not Zap approved. In this case, you know, I have to turn them down and say, I'm sorry, I can't have that crab that your buddy caught, which normally I would be able to have, but sorry, you cooked it. which has happened twice now, then people feel all bad and I feel bad because they're trying to help me out, and it kind of makes me feel like a jerk. And then there's people that bring me food that is ZAP approved. My friends brought me some pumpkins that they grew. They just want to give it to me. And I'm like, no, it doesn't really work that way, because in the apocalypse, you wouldn't just be giving me your food, you know? I'd have to give up something to get it. And so when they find out that they have to trade me for it, they just want to trade for nothing, basically. They're like, oh, I'll trade you these 2 pumpkins for, you know, whatever, something insignificant. So it's really difficult to have an exchange rate in trading that I feel is legitimate. So I'm constantly feeling like I'm kind of bending the rules, and it's not being as legitimate as I would like it to be. And then so a big problem with this too is that I'll see people when I'm out and about and I don't have anything to trade. So I'll be at their house and they'll say, oh, I've got these squash or whatever. And so they give me these squash and I'm like, okay, well, I need to trade for these things. And they're like, okay, yeah, we'll deal with that later. And then I don't see them for months. I mean, I guess debt works both ways. So there's egg debt, people owe me eggs, so I'm in squash debt to some people now. And I need to figure out something to trade them before ZAP's over to reduce my squash debt. I hope to be in 0 squash debt, or any kind of debt, by the time ZAP's over. I've been rambling on for a while now. That's about all I have to say about month 4 and my reflections on it. Things that I've noticed, you know, things that I found interesting. Hopefully you found them interesting. Alright, so that gives us 4 months down and 8 months to go. We're going. I'm gonna say we got 4 months down and 2 months to go to 6 months. That sounds a lot better to me. I couldn't convince even one person to do it with me, so it's just me. Strange debt going around. Succulent debt, squash debt, pumpkin debt, egg debt, chicken debt, goose debt, deer debt.